cafe was quiet in the early afternoon, with only a few regulars sitting at the small wooden tables, sipping their coffee and chatting softly. The sunlight poured in through the large front windows, catching the dust motes in the air, making the room feel warm and almost magical. Behind the counter, the young waitress moved quickly but gently, clearing tables, refilling cups, and making sure everyone was comfortable. She had a calm presence, a quiet strength that people didn't notice at first but felt as they passed by. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her eyes held a certain depth, as if she had seen a lot more than most people her age. The cafe was not fancy. The tables were scratched and the chairs creaked when people sat down, but it had a charm that made people want to stay. In one corner, there was a small piano, polished but slightly worn, mostly ignored. Occasionally, someone would glance at it and smile, thinking about playing, but no one ever did. Today, that corner caught the attention of a man who had just walked in. He was not an ordinary visitor. He was tall and well-dressed, carrying an air of quiet confidence and wealth. People turned their heads as he entered, sensing his presence even if they didn't know why. He ordered a coffee and sat near the piano, looking around the room. He noticed the young waitress moving between tables, polite and attentive, yet something about her struck him. There was a quiet dignity in the way she carried herself, a hint of sadness that didn't go unnoticed. He watched as she paused to smile at a customer, her hands moving with grace as she filled a cup and set it carefully on the table. Her movements were precise, almost like a dance, and he found himself curious. When she came to take his order, he smiled politely. "Do you play the piano?" he asked, pointing to the corner where the small instrument sat. The waitress paused, her hands frozen for a moment. She looked at him, unsure how to respond. I used to," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. She avoided his eyes and quickly turned to get his coffee, leaving him intrigued. He waited patiently, sipping his drink and watching her move about the cafe. Every now and then, he would glance at the piano, wondering if she really could play, or if it was just a memory of the past. The man had traveled to many places and met many talented people, but something about this young woman felt different. There was a story behind her eyes, a hidden depth that he wanted to understand. As the afternoon went on, more customers came in. Some noticed him sitting quietly, his gaze fixed on the waitress as she served others. He wasn't rude or pushy, just quietly observing, almost as if he were waiting for something. The waitress, meanwhile, went about her work, unaware of the silent attention. She had grown used to people looking but not really seeing her. Life had taught her to stay in the background, to do her job and keep her past hidden. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the man got up and walked toward the piano. He looked at the young waitress with a gentle smile. "Would you play something for me?" he asked. His voice was kind but firm, leaving little room for refusal. The waitress froze. Her hands trembled slightly, and her heart began to race. She had not touched a piano in years. Memories flooded back. Long hours of practice, competitions, applause, and then the sharp pain of loss that had made her give it all up. She shook her head gently. "I can't," she said quietly. "I haven't played in a long time." The man nodded, but he didn't give up. He knelt slightly to meet her eyes. "I understand. But sometimes we don't know how much we still have until we try. Please, just a few notes. Just for me." The waitress looked around. The cafe was quiet again. Some of the customers had noticed the tension and were watching curiously. She felt a mix of fear and something else she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could play again. She slowly walked to the piano, her hands shaking. She sat down on the bench and stared at the keys, feeling the cold smoothness under her fingers. The man watched her, giving her space but encouraging her silently. He could sense the hesitation, the doubt, and the memories that held her back. He didn't rush her. He simply waited, knowing that talent like hers could not be forced, only invited to return. After a long moment, she pressed a single key. The note rang out clear and pure, and something inside her stirred. She pressed another, then another, slowly finding a rhythm. Her fingers moved with a grace that surprised her, as if they remembered everything they had once known. The man's eyes lit up, but he remained silent, letting her rediscover herself through the music. The cafe seemed to disappear around her. The clinking of cups, the soft chatter, all faded into the background. For the first time in years, she felt alive, connected to something bigger than her worries and fears. She played slowly at first, tentative, then with more confidence, letting the music flow from her heart. The man smiled gently, understanding that this was not just about talent. It was about healing, about reclaiming a piece of her life she thought she had lost forever. As the final note lingered in the air, the young waitress realized she had played for herself, for the memories, and for the future she could still have. She looked up at the man, tears in her eyes, and he nodded, as if to say, "I knew you could." She felt a mixture of relief, fear, and excitement all at once. The quiet cafe had witnessed something remarkable, a moment that would not be forgotten. The man stood and applauded softly, joined by a few of the customers who had been watching. The applause was gentle but genuine. The waitress felt a strange sense of pride, a spark that she hadn't felt in years. The man approached her and said simply, "Thank you. That was beautiful." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Her heart was racing, and she felt vulnerable, exposed, but also strangely free. The man stepped back, giving her space to recover. She returned to her work behind the counter, but now with a new lightness in her step. Something had shifted inside her. A door had been opened that she didn't even know was closed. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly, but the energy in the cafe had changed. Customers felt it too, though they couldn't explain why. The young waitress moved among them with the same care, but there was a subtle difference in her expression, a softness around her eyes, and a hint of hope that had not been there before. The man finished his coffee and prepared to leave, glancing back at her with a thoughtful look. He knew this was only the beginning of a story far bigger than this small cafe, a story that would touch many lives if she let it. As he stepped outside into the sunlight, he paused for a moment, thinking about how life sometimes nudges people in the right direction. All it took was a gentle push, a little encouragement, and the courage to take a risk. He hoped that the young waitress would find the strength to embrace what she had temporarily forgotten, and to let the world see the extraordinary talent that had been hidden for so long. And deep down, she felt it too, though she didn't yet know where it would lead. The young waitress returned to her work behind the counter, her hands slightly trembling and her heart still racing from the brief piano performance. Though the cafe had returned to its usual rhythm, she could not shake the memory of the notes she had played. Each key had felt familiar, like meeting an old friend she had not seen for many years. Her mind wandered back to the time when music had been the center of her world, a place where she felt safe and complete. Now it had come back to her in the most unexpected way, in front of a stranger who had somehow seen her beyond her quiet exterior. As she went about serving coffee and clearing tables, she noticed that some customers were watching her, not just as a waitress, but with curiosity and admiration. They had witnessed something extraordinary without understanding it, and their subtle smiles reminded her that the world still held moments of unexpected beauty. She felt a strange mixture of embarrassment and pride. Playing the piano had always been personal, something she had shared only with herself or a select few. To have it witnessed so openly stirred feelings she did not yet know how to name. The man who had asked her to play remained in the cafe, quietly observing her from a corner table. He did not pressure her further. Instead, he sat with a calm patience, as if he understood that the process of rediscovering oneself could not be rushed. He noticed the way her eyes flicked toward the piano from time to time, the faint longing in her gaze, and he felt a quiet satisfaction. The brief performance had been a small spark, and he suspected that spark could grow into a flame if given encouragement. After a few minutes, he called her over once more. She approached hesitantly, unsure what he wanted. He smiled warmly and gestured toward the piano. "Would you mind sitting again? Just a few more notes if you feel ready," he said gently. There was no pressure, only an invitation. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keys, memories of past performances mingling with the fear of failure. But something inside her nudged her forward, a small whisper reminding her of what she had once loved. She sat at the piano again, her fingers brushing lightly over the keys, testing the weight and feel. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she began to play. The first few notes were soft, tentative, as if she were speaking to the instrument rather than performing for anyone else. The man listened quietly, appreciating the delicacy of her touch, the way each note seemed to carry a piece of her story. Gradually, her confidence grew, and the music began to flow more naturally, filling the room with a richness that surprised even her. Customers who had not been paying attention started to notice. Conversations paused, heads turned, and a hush fell over the cafe. People watched as the young woman transformed before their eyes. She was no longer just a waitress. She had become a storyteller through music. Every note seemed to speak of her past, her dreams, her struggles, and her resilience. The man sensed that the music carried not just skill, but emotion, the kind that could touch anyone who listened closely. As she played, memories of her family and childhood returned in vivid fragments. She remembered sitting at a larger piano in her home, her mother gently correcting her posture, her father applauding her efforts, the thrill of small recitals where her talent had been praised. Those memories were tinged with sorrow, though, as they reminded her of what she had lost. Life had shifted abruptly, and music had been set aside, replaced by survival and responsibilities. Yet, in this moment, she felt a sense of reclaiming, as if each note was a step back toward the person she had once been. The man approached slowly as she played, careful not to interrupt. He spoke softly. "Your music is beautiful, but I sense there is a story behind it. You've carried a lot with you. It shows in the way you play." His words were gentle, not invasive, yet they struck a chord within her. She had always believed that talent alone could define a person, but she now realized it was the experiences, the struggles, and the emotions behind the music that made it powerful. She stopped abruptly, the final note lingering in the air. Her eyes were wet, and she quickly turned away from the piano, retreating to a corner of the cafe. Her hands shook slightly as she tried to regain composure. The customers who had been quietly watching sensed the intensity of the moment but did not intrude. They felt they had witnessed something intimate, something personal that they were fortunate to see, and they quietly returned to their own conversations, careful not to disturb her. The man remained standing near the piano, respecting her space. He did not speak immediately, understanding that she needed time. After a moment, he said softly, "I didn't mean to overwhelm you. I just wanted to see your talent, and perhaps help you remember it for yourself." His words were sincere, carrying no judgment or expectation. They were an acknowledgement of her abilities and her emotions, and they seemed to reach her in a way that few had. She finally looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's been so long since I've played like that. I didn't realize how much I missed it. But it's complicated. Music. It reminds me of things I've lost." She paused, collecting herself. "I didn't think I could play again." He nodded gently, understanding the weight of her words. Sometimes the things we love the most also hurt the most. But that doesn't mean we should let go entirely. Music has a way of healing if we let it. Maybe it can help you, not just remind you of loss. He offered no promises, no grand statements, just a quiet presence and an understanding ear. The waitress took a deep breath, her fingers unconsciously brushing the keys again. She was not ready to play fully, not yet, but the brief touch reminded her of the joy she had once known. She allowed herself a small smile, the first in a long while. There was a flicker of hope that had been dormant for years, and it sparked something inside her that she could not ignore. The rest of the afternoon passed in a mixture of quiet service and lingering music in her mind. She moved among the tables with a renewed sense of awareness, noticing the small details she had often overlooked. The way sunlight hit the table, the expressions on the faces of regular customers, the subtle sounds of the cafe that formed a background symphony to her day. Every detail felt heightened, as if the music had opened a door within her senses. The man eventually stood to leave, but he stopped near the counter once more. "I hope you consider playing again, whenever you're ready," he said softly. "Not for anyone else, but for yourself. You have a gift that deserves to be remembered and cherished." His words were simple but carried weight. They lingered in the air, a gentle encouragement that she would carry with her long after he had gone. Once he left, she leaned against the counter, closing her eyes for a moment. The emotions of the day were overwhelming: fear, excitement, sadness, and hope all mingling together. She realized that playing the piano again was not just about music. It was about reclaiming a part of herself she had thought was lost forever. The experience had awakened something inside her, a spark of courage and determination that she had not known she still possessed. As the cafe quieted down and evening approached, she found herself glancing at the piano again, a small smile forming on her lips. The brief moments of music had reminded her of who she was and what she had loved. It was a beginning, not an end. She understood that the path ahead might be difficult, that memories and emotions could overwhelm her at times, but she also knew that she had taken the first step back toward herself. That night, as she walked home, the sounds of the city faded into the background, replaced in her mind by the melody she had played. The notes lingered, carrying with them a promise of renewal and possibility. She felt lighter, freer, and strangely empowered. Something significant had shifted within her, even if she could not yet fully understand it. The experience in the cafe had reminded her that life sometimes offers unexpected chances, and that taking them, however scary, could open doors to a future she had once only dreamed of. She returned to her small apartment with a sense of quiet anticipation. She did not immediately play again, but she sat at the edge of her bed, thinking about the keys, the notes, the feeling of music flowing through her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope that she might play again, not just in private, but in a way that could touch the lives of others. The memory of the man's encouragement lingered in her mind, a gentle reminder that sometimes people appear in our lives at the exact moment we need a push, even if we don't realize it at first. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about the piano, about the music, and about the possibility of a new chapter. She had taken a first step, small but significant, and she knew it was only the beginning. Tomorrow and the days after would hold new opportunities to explore what she had rediscovered. The quiet evening was filled with promise, and in her heart, she felt the subtle but undeniable shift of change, one that could lead to something remarkable if she allowed herself to follow it. The following day, the cafe buzzed with its usual morning rhythm. The young waitress arrived early, taking a deep breath as she unlocked the doors. The memory of yesterday's events lingered with her, a mixture of excitement and anxiety that made her heart beat faster than usual. She moved through her tasks with a quiet focus, pouring coffee, setting tables, and greeting the few early customers who had already arrived. Every sound, every movement felt sharper, more significant. The brief return to the piano had stirred something in her that she could not ignore, and she found herself thinking about it constantly. The man had not returned yet, but she could not stop wondering about him. Who was he really? Why had he noticed her, not just as a waitress but as someone with hidden talent? His presence felt gentle yet compelling, like a quiet force urging her to remember herself. She tried to push the thoughts aside and focus on work, but the image of him sitting patiently, waiting for her to play again, kept replaying in her mind. Mid-morning, the cafe manager, a friendly older woman who had been at the cafe for many years, approached the young waitress. She placed a hand on her shoulder and gave a knowing smile. "You played yesterday, didn't you?" she asked softly. The waitress hesitated, unsure how to respond. She nodded slightly, feeling a flush of embarrassment but also a strange pride. The manager leaned closer. "I didn't know you could play like that. You were amazing. I've always known there was something special about you, but I didn't know it was this powerful. You were born for it." Her words were warm and sincere, and they stirred emotions the young woman had kept buried for years. For a moment, she felt seen, truly seen, for her talent and not just for the work she did every day. The manager continued, speaking carefully as if revealing a secret. "There's more to your story, isn't there? Something I think even you have not fully shared." The waitress looked down, hesitant. The memories of the past were both comforting and painful. Playing the piano had always been tied to family, dreams, and then heartbreak. The manager's eyes were kind and patient, waiting for her to decide whether to speak. Slowly, she began to open up. She spoke about her childhood, about the long hours of practice, the small victories and big competitions. She spoke about her family and the sudden changes that had forced her to leave music behind. Each word was difficult to say, but with the manager listening without judgment, the burden felt a little lighter. The act of speaking the story aloud, of acknowledging both the joy and the pain, brought a strange relief. The manager nodded as she listened, her expression thoughtful. "It makes sense why you haven't played in so long. Life takes us down paths we don't expect, but talent like yours is never truly lost. It's part of you even when hidden. And sometimes, it takes someone outside your life to remind you of it." Her words reminded the young woman of the man who had encouraged her yesterday. Perhaps he was that reminder, a gentle push from the universe to reclaim what she had put aside. The conversation lingered in her mind throughout the day. Customers came and went, orders were taken, and tables were cleared, but she felt a distance from the usual routine. Her thoughts returned repeatedly to the piano, the music she had played, and the sense of freedom it had given her, even if only briefly. She realized that she had been living in a quiet fog, moving through life without touching the part of herself that had once given her so much joy. Later that afternoon, the man returned to the cafe. The young waitress felt her stomach tighten at the sight of him. He smiled warmly and nodded in greeting, carrying the same calm confidence that had drawn her attention yesterday. Without speaking, he gestured toward the piano, a silent invitation. She swallowed, feeling both fear and anticipation, and walked toward the instrument. This time, she did not hesitate as much. Her hands touched the keys more confidently, and the notes began to flow. The music was richer now, infused with the emotions she had been holding back for so long. She played with a blend of precision and passion, allowing the story of her past and her struggles to pour through each note. The man listened quietly, his expression one of quiet admiration, understanding that this performance was more than just skill. It was her life, her heart, laid bare in sound. As she continued, the cafe seemed to transform. Customers paused to listen, captivated by the depth of feeling in her music. Some closed their eyes, letting the melody carry them away, while others leaned forward, enchanted by the unexpected talent in their midst. The young waitress lost herself in the performance, forgetting for a moment the worries and hardships that had weighed her down for so long. She was not just playing music. She was reclaiming a part of herself she thought was lost forever. After the performance, she stepped back from the piano, breathless and emotional. The man approached gently, speaking softly. "Your music is extraordinary. I can see the strength and pain behind it. Have you considered what could happen if you allowed yourself to play more, to let the world hear what you have been hiding?" His words were not demands, only a suggestion, but they carried the weight of possibility. She realized that she had been holding herself back, not because she lacked talent, but because she feared the emotions the music could bring to the surface. She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. I've missed this more than I realized. It's terrifying and beautiful all at once. I'm not sure if I'm ready for the world to see it fully, but I know I want to try again." Her voice was quiet, but it carried determination. The man smiled, sensing the first stirrings of a journey that could change everything. The days that followed were filled with small, careful steps. The young waitress returned to the piano whenever she could, allowing herself brief moments to explore the music she had once loved. She experimented with melodies, sometimes softly, sometimes with intensity, gradually building confidence. Each note was a small victory, a reclaiming of a life she had almost forgotten. She began to see herself not just as a waitress, but as someone with a talent and a story worth sharing. The manager continued to support her, offering encouragement and understanding. She helped the young woman find moments in her schedule to practice, even if it meant staying after the cafe closed. Slowly, the The small piano in the corner of the cafe became more than a piece of furniture. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the possibility of transformation. One afternoon, the man returned again, this time with a quiet, expectant look. He listened as she played a longer piece, more intricate and expressive than before. He nodded, impressed not only by her skill but by the emotional depth she had found. "You're ready for more than this cafe," he said softly. "You have a story that needs to be shared, not just played alone. Your music can touch more people than you realize." His words were both a challenge and an invitation, and she felt a mixture of fear and excitement at the possibilities they implied. The young waitress paused, thinking about the risks and rewards of taking such a step. Sharing her music with the world would mean confronting her past, her pain, and the vulnerability she had kept hidden for so long. Yet, the thought of holding back, of not allowing her gift to exist beyond these walls, now felt heavier than the fear itself. She realized that the music had always been a part of her identity, and denying it had left a void in her life. That evening, as the cafe closed and the last customers left, she sat at the piano once more. Her fingers moved confidently across the keys, the notes flowing freely. The man watched quietly, sensing the transformation taking place. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an artist rediscovering her voice, her courage, and her place in the world. The music carried not only her talent but her resilience, her dreams, and the quiet hope that had been rekindled in her heart. As the final notes faded, she looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "I think I'm ready to see where this can go," she said softly. He nodded, understanding that this was more than a promise. It was a beginning. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she had taken the first true steps toward reclaiming the life and passion that had always been hers, waiting quietly for the right moment to return. The young waitress had begun to notice small changes in herself. Her movements at the cafe were lighter, her smile more frequent, and there was a quiet strength in her eyes that had not been there before. Playing the piano again had awakened something within her, something that she thought had been lost forever. She found herself thinking about music throughout the day, humming tunes as she worked, imagining melodies that she might play next. The piano in the corner of the cafe had become more than an instrument. It was a reminder that she still had a voice, a story, and a gift that could no longer remain hidden. One afternoon, after the cafe had closed for cleaning, the man returned. This time, he did not speak immediately but simply observed her as she practiced alone. She was playing a piece that she had written herself years ago, a melody that was both tender and powerful. Her fingers moved with confidence and fluidity, expressing emotions that words could not capture. He watched quietly, sensing that she was ready for a conversation about her past and the path she might take next. When she finally finished, she took a deep breath and turned to face him. "I don't know if I can do more than this," she admitted softly, her voice filled with both fear and hope. "It feels like opening a door I have kept closed for so long, and I'm not sure what will come out if I step through it." He smiled gently. "I understand, but sometimes the only way to move forward is to face what we have been avoiding. Music is not just about talent. It is about courage, about sharing a piece of your heart with the world. You have done that here and it is beautiful. But you have more to give, and you deserve to see where it can take you." She looked down at the piano, her hands resting lightly on the keys. Memories of her childhood flooded back. Hours of practice, small performances in local halls, the pride of her parents as they watched her play. She remembered the sudden changes that had taken her away from that life, the loss of security and support, and the fear that she might never be able to reclaim her dreams. And yet, here she was, playing again, rediscovering the courage that had always been a part of her. "I want to try," she said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I don't know what it will look like, or how people will react, but I want to see what I can do." Her words carried a quiet determination, a willingness to embrace the unknown. The man nodded approvingly, sensing that she had reached a pivotal moment in her journey. Over the next few days, he visited frequently, offering guidance and encouragement without ever imposing his will. He helped her understand that her music was not just a personal expression but a gift that could touch the lives of others. He encouraged her to think about performing beyond the cafe, to consider small recitals or local events where she could gradually share her talent with a wider audience. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying to her, but the thought of reclaiming her place in the world of music filled her with a sense of purpose. One afternoon, the cafe manager joined their conversation. She had noticed the changes in the young waitress and wanted to offer her support. "You have a gift," she said, her voice warm and sincere, "and I can see that it is bringing you back to life in a way that nothing else has. Don't be afraid to explore it, to let it grow. People will see your courage and your talent, and they will be moved by it." Her words resonated deeply, affirming the young woman's growing confidence and determination. With encouragement from both the manager and the man, she began to take small steps toward sharing her music more broadly. She started by performing brief pieces for the regular customers who frequented the cafe, testing her nerves and gauging their reactions. Each time she played, she felt a mixture of excitement and vulnerability, but she also felt a growing sense of empowerment. The applause and appreciation she received were small but meaningful, reinforcing the idea that her talent had value and that she had a place in the world beyond the cafe. As she grew more confident, the man suggested something more significant. "There is a local community event coming up," he said one evening. "It's small, but it's a chance for you to perform in front of a larger audience. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to be yourself and let your music speak." The idea both thrilled and frightened her. Performing outside the safe confines of the cafe was a challenge she had never faced, but it was also an opportunity to step fully into her talent and her story. She spent the next few days preparing, practicing tirelessly, and confronting the fears that had held her back for so long. Each note she played was a reminder of her resilience, her passion, and her ability to overcome the obstacles that life had placed before her. The man continued to offer guidance, helping her refine her pieces and encouraging her to express the emotions she had kept hidden. The manager provided moral support, reminding her that courage often begins with a single step and that the world needed to hear her music. The day of the event arrived, and the young waitress felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. She arrived early, taking in the atmosphere and observing the small crowd gathering. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the piano, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself of the journey that had brought her to this moment. She was no longer the hesitant, unsure girl who had avoided music for years. She was someone who had rediscovered her voice and was ready to share it with others. When it was her turn to perform, she sat at the piano and began to play. The notes flowed effortlessly, filled with emotion and strength. Each melody told a story of loss, hope, and renewal. The audience listened quietly, captivated by the depth of feeling in her performance. Some closed their eyes, letting the music transport them, while others watched in admiration and respect. For the first time, she felt the power of her music to connect with others, to evoke emotion and understanding, and it filled her with a profound sense of fulfillment. After the performance, the applause was genuine and heartfelt. She felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration, knowing that she had faced her fears and succeeded in expressing herself fully. The man approached, smiling with pride. "You have done wonderfully," he said. "This is just the beginning. There is so much more for you to explore and share. Your music can touch lives in ways you cannot yet imagine." His words were a reaffirmation of her journey, a reminder that the courage to take the first step had opened doors she never thought possible. As the evening drew to a close, the young waitress reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the hesitant notes played in the quiet cafe to the confident performance in front of an audience, she had taken steps that had transformed her life. She had confronted her fears, reclaimed her talent, and begun to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. The journey was far from over, but she now understood that her music was not just a part of her past. It was a living expression of her present and future, waiting to be shared with the world. The young waitress had grown in ways she had never expected. Her confidence at the piano was now firm, and she had begun to see herself not just as someone with hidden talent, but as a person capable of sharing her gift with the world. The community event had been a turning point, showing her that music could connect hearts and inspire others. Still, she felt there was more to uncover, a deeper understanding of herself and her journey that had yet to come. One morning, the man appeared at the cafe earlier than usual. He greeted her warmly, but his eyes carried a hint of curiosity, as if he were about to reveal something important. He had brought a small envelope, which he handed to her with a gentle smile. She took it, confused but intrigued, and carefully opened it. Inside was a letter neatly written, with elegant handwriting that seemed oddly familiar. She read the words slowly, her heart catching in her chest. The letter was from the man himself, dated many years ago, sent to a foundation supporting young musicians. It spoke of encouragement, hope, and a belief in the potential of talented children. She realized with astonishment that the letter had been meant for her, sent when she was a young girl, encouraging her to pursue her music despite the challenges she faced. The letter had been misplaced and never reached her, but now, decades later, it had returned, in the hands of the very man who had first noticed her talent in the cafe. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up at him. This was meant for me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He nodded gently. "Yes, I never knew you received it, but I always hoped it would reach someone who needed encouragement. I suppose it found its way to you in its own time." The realization was overwhelming. He had unknowingly influenced her life long before they had met in the cafe, and now fate had brought them together again. The man's words and the letter stirred a mix of emotions within her: surprise, gratitude, and a profound sense of destiny. She felt that her journey had been guided by invisible hands, shaping her path in ways she had never imagined. The piano, the music, the encouragement, it all seemed to come together in a way that transcended chance. Over the next few days, she found herself reflecting on the twists and turns of her life. The hardships that had forced her to leave music behind no longer felt like the end of her story. Instead, they were part of a larger narrative, one that had prepared her for this very moment. She realized that the piano, once a source of both joy and pain, had become a symbol of resilience and hope. The letter, the man's guidance, and her own determination had all converged to help her reclaim what she had lost. Encouraged by this revelation, she decided to take a bold step. She arranged to perform at a small local recital, a gathering of musicians and music lovers who shared a passion for talent and expression. The preparation was intense, but she approached it with a newfound sense of purpose. Each practice session was filled with reflection, emotion, and a growing confidence that she could share her music fully and honestly. The day of the recital arrived, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. She entered the room, her hands slightly trembling but her mind focused. The piano awaited her, familiar yet powerful, a companion that had been with her through every stage of her journey. As she sat down and placed her fingers on the keys, she felt a wave of calm wash over her. She was ready. When she began to play, the room fell silent. Each note was precise yet filled with emotion, every melody carrying the story of her life. The joys, the losses, the hopes, and the rediscovered courage. The audience listened intently, captivated by the depth and sincerity of her performance. She could feel the connection, the shared humanity that music brought to those who heard it. For the first time in years, she was not just playing for herself. She was reaching out to touch the hearts of others. The man watched from the side, his eyes filled with pride and admiration. He had known she had the talent, but he was amazed at how she had grown, how she had embraced not only her gift but her story. The letter, the encouragement, the journey they had shared, all of it had led to this moment. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his quiet support had helped her rediscover a path that was always meant for her. As the final notes faded, the room erupted in applause. The young waitress stood, her hands still resting on the keys, and allowed herself a moment to absorb the reaction. Tears streamed down her face, not from fear or anxiety, but from the overwhelming sense of achievement and validation. She had confronted her past, reclaimed her talent, and shared it with the world. The journey had been long and challenging, but she had emerged stronger and more confident than ever before. After the recital, she spoke with members of the audience, receiving words of encouragement and admiration. Many shared how moved they had been by her performance, how her music had resonated with their own experiences and emotions. She realized that her talent was not just a personal treasure. It was a gift that could inspire, comfort, and uplift others. The recognition and appreciation she received reinforced the idea that her journey was meaningful and that her music had a purpose beyond her own fulfillment. That evening, as the event concluded and the audience dispersed, the man approached her. "You did beautifully," he said softly. "I always knew you had the strength and talent to reach this point. Now, the world can see what you have to offer, and I hope you continue to embrace every opportunity that comes your way." She smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and connection. His support had been unwavering, and his faith in her had given her the courage to take steps she had never thought possible. In the days that followed, her life began to change in subtle but meaningful ways. She continued to perform at local events, gradually gaining recognition and building a small but loyal following. Her confidence grew with each performance, and she found joy in sharing her music with others. The cafe remained a cherished space, a place where her journey had begun, but she now saw herself as someone capable of reaching far beyond its walls. One quiet evening, she returned to the cafe after a long day of performing. She sat at the piano alone, reflecting on how far she had come. Her fingers moved over the keys effortlessly, creating melodies that flowed naturally from her heart. She thought about the twists of fate, the encouragement she had received, and the courage she had found within herself. Everything had led to this moment, and she felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. The man visited one last time before he traveled for his next commitments. They sat together in the cafe, talking quietly about music, life, and the future. "You've grown in ways that I could not have imagined," he said. "But remember, this is only the beginning. Your music, your courage, and your story will continue to inspire others, and you have the power to shape your path in ways you choose." She nodded, understanding that her journey was ongoing, filled with endless possibilities and opportunities to grow, share, and inspire. As he left, she turned her attention back to the piano, her fingers brushing the keys lightly. She played a gentle, flowing melody, one that captured her journey, the struggles, the losses, the rediscovery of her talent, and the hope that had been rekindled within her. The music filled the cafe and her heart, a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of encouragement. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she had found her voice, her purpose, and the strength to follow her dreams wherever they might lead.